Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, Going Down the Road with Randy. This one's going to be called The First Indonesian Bus Ride. Be sure to check out my brand new Facebook page. It still has that new Facebook page smell. And on it you can see some pictures of the episodes. So anyway, I thought it might make some sort of a weird reverse logic if I made this second podcast about our first 3 weeks in Indonesia to bookend with the first podcast, which of course was about our last 2 weeks in Indonesia. I'm going to springboard into Indonesia by quickly talking about our last 2 weeks in Australia. In the spring, we had bought a VW camper van while we were living and working illegally in Sydney. We named her Stella Blue and we paid $4,000 for her. She was actually registered in South Australia somehow, even though I've never in my life actually been to South Australia. But I was able to renew the van's registration through the mail. Anyway, we had driven the van up almost the entire east coast of Australia from Sydney to Cairns, and then we turned to the interior of the country, perversely known as the Outback, and made it all the way to Uluru, which most people know as Ayers Rock. From there, we headed back north all the way up to Darwin, where we were now waiting to sell the van to get cash to get to Indonesia and the rest of Southeast Asia. In Darwin there is, or at least there was, a sort of unofficial car sale lot on Mitchell Street. Travelers leaving for Southeast Asia were selling vehicles to incoming travelers looking for work. Darwin being the closest airport to destinations in Southeast Asia, and Australia being a Commonwealth country, which citizens of Commonwealth countries are allowed to work legally. Of course, the conflict is that the travelers coming in had no money, and us travelers heading out were looking to cash out and get as much as possible to continue traveling into Southeast Asia. My journal entry for Thursday, September 26 reads, I'm going to skim over these last 10 days in Darwin, mostly because nothing happened. Every day we went down to Mitchell Street to sell the van. Evenings we'd party, drink some wine, see a movie, or both, During this time of time killing, we saw Terminator 2, City Slickers, Backdraft, Naked Gun 2.5. I also read the Songlines by Bruce Chatwin, A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irwin, and The Fourth Protocol by Frederick Forsyth. We finally sold our van for $3,700 Australian and immediately bought $1,000 worth of traveler's checks each, mailed home lots of souvenirs, and generally had a good old time partying like drunken rednecks on payday. On Wednesday, September 25th, we boarded Merpati Flight 841 from Darwin, Australia to Kupang, the island of Timor, Indonesia. We met up with a Welsh couple, Phil and Karen, who had traveled in Africa before Australia, and we kind of hit it off with them, and in many of the places we were going, there would be safety in numbers. They were going our way, so we teamed up. We landed in Kupang, and it has been said it hits you with all the shock of Asia. Australia was, of course, a very first world country, but everything changes after a short 1-hour flight. Suddenly, whammo. Oh, hello, this is different. I had the sudden realization that I had never actually been in a third world country before. We clear immigration with a 60-day visa after showing our traveler's checks, and then I changed money and got 2,000 Indonesian rupiah to the dollar for a total of 200,000 rupiah. If I changed half my money, I'd be an Indonesian millionaire. We leave the airport and are instantly pounced upon by a friendly horde of local lads, all eager to take us someplace to stay. The taxis wanted 7,500 rupiah, $3.75, but we hike past them to the BMOs, local minivans, and get a ride to the Eden homestay for 500 rupiah, a quarter. I felt like the real traveling had begun. The trip from the airport to the homestay assailed our senses as only Asia can. The gaily decorated BMOs wind their way through streets crowded with other BMOs, pedestrians, goats, chickens, children carrying water in buckets suspending from a pole. You name it, all while constantly honking at each other in some kind of taxi Morse code known only to them. But everyone smiles. Everyone smiles. And suddenly, wherever we go, we are instantly the center of attention. One of these things is not like the others, and we were it. We settled in to our rooms at Eden, and the whole group goes into town, chaperoned by our new friend Martin, who is organizing a boat trip to Savao for us. We go to some restaurant and order beers, bottled water, fried noodles, fried rice, and the whole bill is less than $5 for the two of us. A room is $1.50 with breakfast. A beer is relatively expensive at $1.75. Meals cost maybe $1 or $2. I could tell I'm going to love this place. After dinner, we wandered about, and then after we got tired of being on center stage, we came home to search out that elusive bottle of Arak or Sophie or Tuak, or whatever the local homegrown liquor was called. We were finally led to it just down the street, 50 cents a bottle. We sampled and bought. Greta said, stuff tastes like weak tequila. I think it's kind of winey tasting, not like spirit, fermented, not distilled. It's made from a palm tree juice. It's not bad. We enjoy it, especially when it's washed down by a coldish Bintang beer. We carefully tuck in our mosquito nets, purify our water, and go to sleep. Breakfast the next morning consists of a half a fried banana sandwich and a glass of tea. We grab a BMO into town and go to the Pelny ferry office to book our boat out to Flores Island on Monday. We get some food and go to the tourist office. Another BMO takes us to the Impasan market. What a place. It's a slack time, obviously. Half the people are crawled into little holes and sleeping, and the other half are staring at us. There are live chickens for sale, dried and fresh fish, quail eggs, betel nut, and lots of unrecognizable goods. Betel nuts are a fruit of a palm tree, and they're chewed throughout Southeast Asia. Produces a mild narcotic effect and voluminous amounts of red spit that you see all over the sidewalks everywhere. A man demonstrates the use of betel nut for us, mixing it with a bit of lime and some leaf and putting it in my mouth, while another tries to sell me a live bird on a string for 50 cents. I almost buy it just to let it go, but I'm pretty sure that's what you're supposed to do after wishing on it or something. I don't really know. But we wander about until the staring starts getting to us again, so we walk back down to the Eden guest house and had a swim in the lagoon. We watch the local women as skillfully, through dexterous use of their sarong, wash both their clothes and their bodies. They bang the clothes on rocks, soap extensively, bang some more. And when washing themselves, the women somehow manage to cover themselves the whole time. How does one wash oneself while staying fully clothed? I don't know. They do, and it's amazing to watch. And I did. I kept hoping for a little peek. I got nothing. What? It's hardwired. I'm not a perv. Anyway, that's what we spent the afternoon relaxing. And tonight, we'll go in and have another great cheap meal. What bliss to not have to cook or pay a lot of money. I think I'm really going to like this country. The people are so friendly and helpful, and the countryside is so beautiful, a bit unsanitary. I ask myself, why did we spend 9 months in Australia? Fools we were. Clogged Monday is a small price to pay for this type of traveling. Our $1,000 will last us far more than 2 months in this country. But the travel could be challenging, as the trip we took to a little town called Soe the next day illustrated. Soe is a small village east of Kupang, which is supposedly known for their ikat, and since we have a couple days before the ferry, we decided to take a trip. Ikat is the locally woven fabric, and it's a primary source of income for villagers. We caught a 4-lamp BMO to the bus terminal. That's how you tell the BMO route, by the number of lights or lamps. Immediately upon descending from the bima, we were engulfed in a sea of shouting Indonesians, all of them clamoring for us to pick them for the bus ride to Soe. Finally, we pick a bus and set off. It's only 110 kilometers, less than 70 miles to Soe, but it takes us 3 hours to get there. Not only are the roads very windy, but we also had to stop to let people on and off to sell us boiled eggs, apparently a secondary source of income for the villagers. It's amazing how many people were fit on this small bus. There must be 20. We're cramped between 3 other people with our knees basically up to our chins. A long 3 hours later, we are let off outside the Losman, or Hotel Anda, in Soe. Here we are offered a room for 3,500 rupiah, $1.75 a night. We accept and find that this price also includes a local guide, Luce, the English teacher at the school. He takes us to the market and shows us around. Like the market in Kupang, it is a kaleidoscope of sight and sound and smells. Orange-lipped men and women in ikat sarongs squat behind their meager goods and eye us curiously. Once again, we are the center of attention, and I'm offered an ancient Dutch sword and an old Dutch coin, other treasures. We declined to buy anything, including the ikat we were offered, though it looks good. We tried to eat, but the restaurant was too crowded, so we decided to come back later. We go back to the hotel and then come back to the restaurant, but that was a big mistake. The food is now not only cold, but the meat is the toughest stuff imaginable. It's really inedible. Cold food, warm beer, everything sucks. Nobody finishes their dinner. Puts a bit of a damper on the evening. But then this is what traveling is all about, right? If you think about it, true traveling is all about the suffering. And that means enduring the local transportation with all its heat and lack of personal space. In fact, just dealing with the fact that there is no concept of personal space. You eat what's available, and often it's unimaginably fantastic, and sometimes it's truly inedible, and you're faced with the ignominy of not eating food that other people are dying to eat. When you step off a bus in a crowded, bustling market, and like a scene in a movie, the minute you step off, especially if there's only like 4 of you, all eyes in the market are instantly locked on you, and all activity comes to a stop, and you're standing there in really awkward silence, smiling, waving, and saying, "Hi," "Hello," and you're thinking in your head, "We're here," and you're mumbling to yourself in your head, "I'm not sure why we're here, but we're here." Anyway, I'm not some kind of a travel snob. Anything that gets you out of your country and out of your own comfort zone is a good thing and a learning experience. But there is a difference between going on a short vacation or a trip and long-term, long-distance, in the hinterlands traveling. Don't even get me started on all-inclusive resorts, which, in my opinion, simply don't count at all. But hey, it's just my opinion, and like assholes, we all have one. Hell, I'm even willing to listen to evidence that I may be one. An asshole, that is. And on Monday, September 30th, we leave Kupang on the island of Timor, Indonesia, to travel by ferry to the next island over, Flores. We will be disembarking in Ende, a town which sits about midway along the island on its southern shore. We get let off at the harbor and enter the fray, literally. There are thousands of people lined up to get on this boat. At 10 a.m., the shoving starts. We soon catch on that the gloves are off. There's no such thing as politeness or common courtesy. It's every man or woman for themselves. And that goes for getting on the boat, going up the gangplank, finally finding an empty mattress inside. Now, I'm a rather large, skinny, white male, and Phil was a Welsh representative of the same type, but we persist and manage to get 5 mats together on deck 5. We resist repeated and persistent efforts to oust us and settle in for a long 10-hour voyage. It's not really uncomfortable, just boring. The meals are rice and cabbage and fresh fish at first, then chicken. Pretty blah. Most difficult thing is constantly being accosted by well-meaning Indonesians wanting to practice their English. They are friendly and helpful, but seem not to know the meaning of privacy. I guess it's because they get so little. Oh well. In a few hours we'll be in Inde and on a new island, Flores, and we'll have some more adaptation to do. As usual, when we get there, there's a fantastic rush to get off the boat. When they finally get the gangplank down and the doors open, hordes of people start piling into the ferry and pushing against a great traffic jam of us going in the other direction. Somehow, someone manages to stop the flow incoming and controls the situation, and we weave our way through the throng. Off the ship, we're funneled into another, no less numerous, teeming mass of humanity. BMO drivers clamor for our attention as we run a gauntlet through them. We've already decided to walk to the Losman Ikhlas, as the BMOs here are 1,000 rupiah for the short drive. The Losman owner meets us as we emerge from the gauntlet and shepherds us up the road to his hotel, which is very clean and brightly lit, and they have an extensive menu, which unfortunately they aren't serving right now. So we have to content ourselves with a couple of San Miguel beers, but they're not bad for $1.25. We have a chat around the table and enjoy being off the heaving boat. It seems like a luxury to be offered a fan in the room for an extra quarter, and so we luxuriate in the languished lap of luxury with our fan. Flores is the second island we have been to in Indonesia. Some facts about Indonesia. It has over 27,000 islands, so we have a bit of ways to go. It's also the fourth most populous country in the world, behind the U.S., China, and India. It is the most populous Muslim country in the world, and yet, depending on which particular island you're on, there is often a quite different dominant religious majority. For example, Bali is primarily Hindu. Flores and Timor, where we have been, are mostly Christian. There's also significant Buddhist and Catholic populations. The Indonesian constitution stipulates religious freedom for all. The thing to do here is to go to a little town called Mone and then hike to the Kelimutu volcano and marvel at its 3 different colored lakes in the caldera. They are a mystery. No one knows why the 3 lakes are different colors. One is almost red, another aquamarine, and the other a more deep green. So the next day, 1st of October, we get a group of 9 of us to hire a BMO for 30,000 rupiah. Yeah, divide that 9 ways. Anyway, if we thought we hired the BMO, that we were going directly, we were mistaken. We drive around Inde an hour while the driver sorts out his affairs for the day so that he can leave. He also has to get gas, and we stop by his house where his assistant practices chugging diesel fuel while attempting to siphon it from a small container. He makes an even bigger mistake when he tries the same thing with engine oil. But there's not enough, so we have to go to the gas station where the typical mob scene is in full force. Diesel costs 15 cents a liter, and regular gas is 27 cents a liter. Not bad prices, actually cheaper than the U.S. With that done, we're finally up the windy, bumpy, mostly unpaved road inexorably up to Mone. The scenery is magnificent. Symmetrically perfect volcanoes keep watch over lush green, idyllic rice paddies. It's a scene just begging for Kodak, if anybody knows what that is anymore. Thatched roofs of the houses add to the pastoral quality. Flores seems so green compared with Timor. More like what I imagine Asia to be like. Steep green hills and low valleys filled with rice paddies. Mone is a small village in the shadow of the triple volcano known as Kelimutu. We have missed the morning market, but check into the Aminamoe homestay and wander about the village admiring the ikop. I even buy a small scarf from a woman weaving in her front yard while her mother ties the threads to be dyed in the house behind. Chickens poke about in the yard while they work. We go on up and explore the waterfall and the hot springs and return to Aminamoe, pay for a huge smorgasbord lunch for only 75 cents, all we can eat and more. In the afternoon, we go up to suss out the shortcut up to Kelamutu. We walk up the steep hills, getting spectacular views over the valley, and on our return, Greta takes a dip in the hot springs. We enjoy another huge, fantastic meal and a few rather tepid bintang beers in the evening, but we make it an early night. Because we have to wake up early at 2:30 a.m. to begin the hike up to Kelamutu. Personally, let me just say, I don't get the whole, you must wake up early to see the sunrise on the volcano. I'm like, how about we wake up late and we'll catch it on the sunset? I mean, like, how many people do that? We stumble past the waterfall in the dark, and then up the hill, which somehow seems to have grown not only steeper but also longer overnight. We pass sleeping villages and finally reach the road, where we stop to have some water and a snack. Wait, there's a damn road? The sun comes up. First, a rosy glow that quickly gathers strength and pushes a fiery red ball upward. But we're there. We leave the road and run up a steep shortcut, and at the top, we're greeted by the otherworldly sight of the lakes. They are different colors. The landscape surrounding them is very surreal as well, kind of like the moon. We popped up across from a car park and look out and walk around the rim of the crater and get a cup of coffee from the enterprising young girls, Mary and Christina. Makes me wonder, if there was a car park, why didn't we just drive up there? I really don't know. I'm at a loss. But anyway, we go to the lookout and see the spectacular Black Lake, but there is a freezing wind, and we soon turn to face the feet-numbing walk back down to Monet. The checkpoint is open as we pass, so we have to stop and pay the 400 rupee fee. No worries. Exhausted, we reach Aminamoe, waving off the ikat sellers everywhere. We have a nap until about 3 and then relax, reading, writing, talking until dinner, and then we get some tepid bintang and another bottle of properly bottled arak, and we argue over the inclusion of albums on our top 100 list. We get up the next day around 8 to pack. Our plan is to go to the village of Nigella today to look at ikat and check out the village and return all the way back to Ende tonight. We wait around until about 10 for our so-called chartered BMO, and then we all pile on it for the 14-kilometer, 45-minute long round trip to Wojcito, where we then have to hike 6 kilometers to Nigella. It's all downhill, which of course translates into uphill on the way back. The landscape is beautiful. Green rice paddies. I mean, does Crayola have a green called rice paddy green? Because if they don't, they sure shit should. Coconut palms swaying on steep volcanic hills. At one point, we pass a very sulfur-smelling hot spring. Water buffaloes and small horses are tied up at intervals along the path. We see Nigella before we get to it, on a steep hill above the sea. Some men are busy building a road at the beginning of town. The village is full of traditional houses on stilts. Sides are made from split bamboo, as are the floors. The roofs are grass on palm thatching. Everyone wants to sell us ikat. As we pass the school, several children ask me for pens, and it so happens that I brought a fistful of colored pens to give away, just for this purpose. I pulled out 4 or 5 of them, and they scrambled. No, they were fighting to get them. It was a portent of things to come. Ikat was everywhere, and after wandering the main street looking at it, we ventured into the depths of the village to Mary and Joseph, a little tea shop set in the veritable mall of ikat. Everyone implores us to buy their ikat. First we have tea and bananas, and then the frenzy starts. Greta and I have been eyeing a blanket across the way, and as we've been drinking our tea and after cursory look at some others, we begin serious bargaining. The bidding starts at 75,000, and we offer 20. She immediately drops to 50, and we counter with 25. She offers 45, and we go to 30. She finally says 40, and we offer 35, but she won't budge from 40. We act like we won't buy it, and she tells us she has to send her children to school. Yeah, I hate it when they play on your emotions. We finally pay the $40,000. It's a lot for us too. $20 is a good day's traveling, but they've probably spent a good part of their lives making this one piece of cloth. Anyway, she then wants us to buy a shawl, but we want to share the wealth and buy one that we've seen across the way. We finally paid $20,000 for it. Everyone's starting to leave now, and the mood of the sellers is getting more and more urgent. This is an understatement, by the way. Greta is looking for a shawl for her mother, having bought another scarf already, and we are separated, each of us surrounded by a sea of faces begging us to buy their ikat. They are literally throwing ikat on us as we leave and shouting out the prices. Haggling has been dispensed with entirely. One woman put a shawl on my shoulders, yelling $14,000. I probably could have pulled out 10 and gotten it, but we literally have more ikat than we can handle, and the scene is becoming more and more scary. Had we been of a much different mindset in retrospect, we could have simply waited for this moment, then capitalized on it. I'm sure others have long since figured this out. Hopefully these folks have a way of selling their quality product without being exploited. I try to leave and become surrounded by kids saying, "Pen, mister." I relent and pull out some more pens, which are promptly snatched from my hands with violence, and a group begins fighting over them on the ground. It's starting to get ugly. 4 boys are with me now, begging for pens. I give them one each, and then I pull out a cigarette. I smoked at the time, profusely, and this was definitely a time for a smoke. People then appeared from nowhere to beg for pens, were now asking me for a cigarette. "Tadak," I say. "Tadak, no, no." But they don't take no for an answer. Finally, in desperation, I pulled all the pens from my bag and throw them into the crowd. They asked us for cigarettes, candy, even our water bottles. We beat it out of there. Me looking like the Pied Piper with a crowd of small kids, which I gradually leave behind. We start up the trail to Wojcito with a bad feeling about Nagella in the pit of our stomachs. The sun beats down on us, and the hills seem steeper going up than going down, a distinct and annoying trait that I have frequently observed in hills all over the world. We're also pissed about the German guy who refused to pay anything for his tea and bananas on the theory that the seller gave her commission anyway. What an asshole you are, surrounded by starving people begging to sell you ikat, and the rich German bastard doesn't want to cough up a mere 500 rupees for his tea. 2 friggin' bits. It's sick, really. And to be clear, I don't care what your nationality is. This particular guy just happened to be German, but assholery is international. We make it back to the Bimo, which takes us to Mone, where we all immediately pile out for the soup sold by the man in the roadside stall for 500 rupees. Spicy and good with some sort of unrecognizable meatballs and 2 kinds of noodles. Good stuff for 75 cents. Afterwards, we hang out at Amina Moe's until dinner. Greta has lately been plagued with masses of bites, which are probably from bed bugs. She's taken antihistamine, applied antihistamine cream, doused herself with DEET. Nothing seems to work. This morning, Amina Moe takes her by the hand and leads her to the witch doctor of the village. A gnarled old woman, blind, her eyes clouded over with cataracts. She feels Greta's arm and then goes and gets an old black sarong and what Greta described as a ring of bone or old polished wood. First she rubs her all over with the black blanket, and then she rubs her all over with the bone thing, which we think may be camphor. She instructs Greta not to sit in the sun and to wear a black sarong made from natural dyes. If she does this, the itch will go away and will never come back. Greta claims that they have now stopped itching. Antihistamine finally kicking in, or a witch doctor, who knows. After one last meal at Amina Moe's, we hop on a truck going to Ende. It is open and cold, but we huddle up in our newly purchased ikat and sing songs all the way for 3 hours. We check back into the Losman Iklas, get our fans, and after a few beers, decide to catch the noon bus to Bajawa rather than the 7 a.m. one. We turn in for the night, exhausted mentally and physically. We sleep in till about 10 and have a nice, refreshing Mondi and a large breakfast with the famous Losman Iklas vegetable omelet for 500 rupees, which, if you don't buy now, is a daggone quarter. I find that I have a touch of diarrhea. Great. Just great. We pack and wait for the bus to Bajawa. It's supposed to leave at noon, comes by at 12:30, finally leaves Ende at 1. Numerous stops are made along the way, and we cross some bridges that look as though they're made for wagons, definitely not for fully overloaded BMOs. The road barely qualifies as one, and at one point, one of our backpacks goes bouncing off the roof to land in the road. Luckily, it didn't roll down the hill to disappear forever like what happened to that German guy in Monet. Side note, honestly, I don't remember that story about the German guy in Monet, but if he lost his pack off a bus, it must have been awful, and poor bastard. Anyway, we stopped halfway at 4 for the driver to have lunch, and we stretch a bit. Dominating the horizon is a large, perfectly symmetrical volcano with a bit of smoke wisping out at the top. I mean, it looked like King Kong or Land of Lost or something. The people here seem poorer, with swollen bellies and thin arms. Everywhere we stop, we are greeted with, "Hello, mister," and the usual curious stares. We finally bounce into Bajawa at about 7 and check into the Losman Canberra. Steve and Kath are here, and we all have dinner upstairs. It's not cheap, and it's not fast, but it's not bad either. I still have the runs anyway, and the only room they have left here with a private Mondi, which is crucial, is going to be 10,000 rupees. Under the circumstances, we take it, hoping to move to a cheaper one tomorrow. Next day is Saturday, October the 5th, and I've still got the trots, but we have tea and go to the bus station, get a truck to Bima. We buy water on the way, and I find an Indonesian English dictionary at the corner shop for 3,500, less than $2. We go to the bus station and wait in vain for a truck to Bima. Karen doesn't feel good, and Greta's not psyched to go. So they go back to the Losman. Meanwhile, we got this guy, Alex, nicknamed Sandro, who latches onto us. While talking with him, I discover that a whole section is missing from my newly purchased dictionary, so I go to return it, and he goes with me. We meet Phil on the way, and he has found out there isn't any truck to Bima until noon. By this time, everyone's disgusted. Greta and Karen have the trots now, too, and the Losman Canberra seems particularly unfriendly. The food is almost maliciously slow. We're all sinking into the quagmire of a bad attitude. We order lunch at 11. Decided to take the day off. Lunch still hadn't arrived by 11:30 when the truck comes around, picking up riders to Bima. Nothing is going right today, and after finally finishing lunch at 1, we just curl up and take a nap until about 4. Tomorrow will be a long 10 or 12-hour bus ride, so we want to relax. We have vowed not to eat in the stupid Losman restaurant again, but it doesn't really matter. With my stomach now, I can't handle more than boiled rice anyway. We wake up, went in search of a good place to eat, finally finding a good rumah makan. In Indonesian, that means eating house, which served up an excellent fast hot meal for cheap. Predictably, we were adopted by an Indonesian lad who took us to see some singing. A lot of people milling about, sort of a career day fair with this singing as a sideshow. They're good, but they don't seem to really get rolling until the voices all sing together and try to keep us awake later on. Sunday, October 6th, not much to tell. Got on the bus at 7:15 that left Bajawa about 8. That bus, of course, is packed to the gills, and after a piss stop or two and a break for lunch, we reached the town of Ruteng at about 1 o'clock. We let off a few people here and there, drive around looking for people going to Labuan Bajo. There's not many takers, so we stretch out and wait a while. The verdant volcanic landscape provides some relief from the heat and the boredom. We're off. We pick up some stragglers along the way. A man gets on holding some live chickens upside down by the legs. Soon the winding, bumpy road works its magic, and the chickens start puking on my feet. I look in my newly acquired Indonesian phrasebook and try to piece out how to say, "Excuse me, sir, your chickens are puking on my feet." When I finally piece it all together, like hours later, and tell him, he just stares at me. God knows what I told him, or, of course, there is the off chance that he understood me completely and he just didn't give a damn. Anyway, we dropped sharply down into Labuan Bajo and arrived safely by some miracle at about 7:30. The Bajo Beach Hotel is full, so we end up at the Sone homestay, which is not just dark and dingy, but also friendly and cheap. We have some tea and go into town for dinner and meet with Steve and Kath, who have been to Komodo today. Monday, October 7th, we leave the Sony homestay to go down into town and check into the Sinjai Losman. We get a double room with a private mandi and a little bargaining for $7,000 a night. It's big and clean as well. Luxury. I'm feeling lethargic and everyone is psyched to go out to Waikiki Beach for the day. My stomach can't handle it, so I stay behind in the room and read and nap and mandi. Everyone comes back in the afternoon raving about the snorkeling there. And we go out for lunch across the road at a new place that has just opened up. Anyway, my stomach is still sending only liquid out of my asshole, so though I'm on a strict rice diet. After dinner, as such, Phil and I wander back to Sone to book a boat to Komodo for early tomorrow morning. The sunset over the many islands scattered in the bay is majestic. We find this dude named Reme in Sone and book a trip for the four of us for $15,000 each, $60,000, half up front. It's more than the going rate, but we're going on the non-feeding day and by ourselves. We don't really want to witness a goat sacrifice to see a Komodo dragon. Reme promises to meet us at the ungodly hour of 4 a.m. We have to wait for dinner, and we don't get back before 10. We say goodbye to Kath and Steve, who are leaving on the ferry to Sape at 8 tomorrow. We're booked for Thursday all the way through to Denpasar, following in their footsteps. Tuesday, October 8th. Waking up at 3 a.m. is a bummer. But an even bigger bummer is waiting outside the Losman for Reme, who never shows up. Finally, at 5 a.m., we give up and go back to sleep. Reme knocks on the door at 7 saying, "Let's go!" But we tell him to piss off and we'll deal with him later. We sleep until 11, have tea, go to find Reme to get our damn money back. He's not at the Sone, so we wait. We go down to change some money, still no Reme. We then tell his mother, and she's mad because she knows nothing about his plans. She takes Greta by the hand and leads us in search of Reme. We find him on the street, and after some discussion, he takes us to the boat captain's house, where after some more discussion, we come out with our $30,000 deposit. Thank God for Indonesian mothers. Now we wasted most of the day on a wild goose chase, but we did get our money back at least. We go back to the Losman, where they placate us with a cup of tea and what my journal says is a wild banana concoction. It must have been good. We go down to the harbor to charter a boat to the island opposite the beach at Waikiki for a couple of hours of snorkeling. The coral here is amazing, and we see 2 crowns of thorns starships. Alien-looking creatures. I mess with one, trying to remove it. They are destructive to coral. We also see a feather star swimming, and as some as yet unidentified worm-like thing. I don't know. Good stuff. Makes me want to go diving again. We get back on the boat for the short trip to Labuan Bajo. Book a boat for Komodo tomorrow with a boat captain named Augustinius. We leave at 3 a.m. Wednesday, October 9th. We're up at 2:30 and again find ourselves waiting for Augustinius, who is not appearing. Finally, someone who we've never seen before leads us to the boat. Still no Augustinius, however. This means that we will have no breakfast or lunch either. But no matter, though. We're on the boat and headed to Komodo. We sleep on the deck most of the way until Komodo comes into the sight and the sun comes up, and our kind host serves us a hot cup of coffee. We anchor amidst the other tourist boats and get ferried over to the island on a dugout canoe. We pay our 1,000 rupiah entrance fee and split the fee for 9 guides and a goat for the feeding. Divided between us 52 tourists, that amounts to 1,250 rupiahs each. With the entrance fee, that's less than $1.50. The assembled horde sets off up the track, and a hot 30-minute walk later, it's only like 8:30 in the morning, we encounter dragons. The goat, which up until now has been happily jogging up the trail, begins to bleat most mournfully. I'm sure it now realizes the role it is destined to play in this scenario. The dragons, for their part, seem to know that they are going to be fed, and this we know by the way they're eyeing us. Really, they are going after us, and we had been lagging a bit and had to run to the protection of the guides with their long forked poles, who were somewhat frantically pushing the dragons away. It's quite scary, and the guides herd us into a small pen with a low fence separating us from the dragons on the outside. Somewhat of a reversal, and I feel a bit like a cow in the pasture. The dragons mill about for a bit and then go down in the dry riverbed below the pen. Some of these dragons are quite large, 4 meters at least. Like 15, 16, 17 feet, I don't know. The goat is tied to a post and its throat is cut, and while the guides barely control the couple of dragons outside the pen, the other dragons in the dry riverbed below rush up the near vertical wall towards the goat. The goat is then heaved into the seething mass of dragons and is immediately covered and disappears from view. The dragons fight for a good piece, and they have the poor thing pulled apart in less than a minute. 5 minutes later, nothing's left of the goat, and the last bit, the entire head, disappears down the neck of the largest dragon, who had quickly claimed his prize and held on until it was the only thing left. The Komodos are now quite sedate, lying in the shade. What a spectacle. One of the best pictures I have of this whole thing is the one I took of the group of tourists witnessing the feeding with their mouths agape. The guides herd us back down the trail to the cafe. We pass on the 1,000 rupiah postcards, but Greta and Karen get nasi goreng, fried rice. Phil and I are still suffering gastrointestinal issues and are fasting. We pick up 2 Americans from Chicago who have been on Komodo for the past several days for a return voyage to Labuan Bajo. On the way back, we stopped off at Pintai Merah Beach, Red Beach, for some snorkeling for about an hour. Greta finds our first Indonesian nudibranch. A nudibranch is a brightly colored marine animal of the mollusk family, but it looks nothing like a clam. We sleep for the most part of the return voyage, except when the boat tilts alarmingly this way and that in the many rip currents and whirlpools. These are very treacherous waters. If you check out a map of the sea between Labuan Bajo, Flores, and Komodo Island, it is studded with islands and islets, and when the tide changes, the currents are quite unpredictable. We reach Labuan Bajo about 3 o'clock and are greeted at our losman with tea and cake. It's a really nice touch. Sometimes I love this place. Augustinius apparently showed up with food and a hangover at 4:30 a.m. What a loser. We spend the afternoon relaxing in preparation for the long journey starting tomorrow. We have made a series of plans to meet Phil and Karen sometime after we meet our friends Bill and Jen and AJ in Bali. Hopefully they work out. An early night in preparation for an early morning. So a quick geography lesson. It's roughly 600 miles from Kupang, Timor, where we landed on September 25th, to Denpasar, Bali, where we had to be by October 12th. We had 2 separate friends coming into Bali on or about that date. Our friends Bill and Jen, who had recently been traveling in Australia, and my good buddy AJ coming in from the USA smack dab into it. All these folks are old friends, co-workers, and troublemakers from Colorado days. Take a moment to imagine, if you will, the challenge of coordinating such a meeting in 1991 with no phone, cell or otherwise. We sometimes gave our parents' numbers to each other to relay messages, but international calling was expensive. With no real mailing address, we always used the American Express offices for mail and message drops, but we never knew if we left before messages arrived. Anyway, 600 miles and several islands to get across. The advantage of going by ferry was that you skipped over some islands. Of course, that was also the prime disadvantage of going by ferry. So we went by bus across the islands and by ferry between them. We were currently in La Bombajo on the western edge of Flores Island, and we would take a ferry to Sumbawa Island and bus across it to the ferry to Lombok Island and bus across Lombok to a ferry to Bali to arrive just in time to hopefully meet our long-lost friends. We had 48 hours to get there. Thursday, October 10th. The journey begins at 8 a.m. when we catch the ferry to Sape on the island of Sumbawa, Indonesia. An uneventful but uncomfortable 10 hours later, we disembark to the island of Sumbawa and board the Damai Indah bus, which will take us to Denpasar in Bali sometime tomorrow night. Actually, the bus we board takes us to Bima, about an hour away, where we would get off to eat dinner and wait for the air-conditioned VIP bus that will be on the rest of the way. They hustle us through our meal, and then the trouble starts. They try to get us on the non-air-conditioned bus, but we refused, and we're left sitting on our bags by the side of the road waiting for the air-conditioned bus for about an hour. Finally it comes, and we pile on, but it soon becomes apparent that this bus doesn't have air conditioning either. But because it's nighttime and it's cool, we don't worry about it. We do worry when about a half hour later the bus pulls over and they start dumping buckets of water into the sieve-like radiator. We begin to wonder, will this bus get us to Bali? But too tired to really care, we try to fall asleep, periodically waking up to yell at the driver for stopping to pick up extra passengers. This is supposed to be an express bus, and they pick up extra people to make a little money on the side. We sleep wrapped in our ikat blankets against the chill, and about 3 a.m. we stop at some little town to eat. I'm afraid as I've taken Imodium for my diarrhea. The driver has been working on the transmission while we've been eating. This bus is a wreck. Onward into the night. We awake to find ourselves pulling into the ferry terminal. We board the ferry to Lombok while they continue to pour more water into this hopeless bus. It's only an hour and a half to Lombok, and by the time we get there, the sun is really starting to broil. Friday, October 11th. We are a barely mobile oven masquerading as an air-conditioned bus. The problem is compounded by the fact that the windows don't open because it's supposed to be an air-conditioned bus. The situation becomes desperate as, nearing heat stroke, the bus stops every 10 minutes to fill with water. We want to get off the bus and get a refund in Mataram on the other side of Lombok, but we can't because they have taken our tickets and won't give them back. Can it get any worse? Oh, why, yes, indeed it can. This is, after all, a bus ride in Indonesia. And one stop for water, the transmission gives out. We are forced to go the last 25 kilometers in first gear. It takes like an hour. Some Indonesian guys who wanted to get off had to wait until the bus slowed down a little bit and jump off. The bus couldn't stop or it would never start again. Oh, but no, it gets worse. We finally reached the depot, which is full of wrecks of buses, none of which has a hope of taking us any further. Apparently the bus we are currently on is the best that the bus company has. We're yelling at these assholes to return our tickets to us so that we can claim a damn refund for this bullshit bus ride. And at one point, I actually start frisking the guy who has them, trying to find them. We're frantic to catch the 2 o'clock ferry to Bali. Finally, a boss man type who speaks good English rides up on a motorcycle. He says we can get our refund and make the ferry. All we have to do is board this wreck of a bus over yonder with no windshield. Well, okay, sure. Why the hell not? We do. The bus speeds through the crowded streets of Mataram, horn working overtime. I mean, if the horn gave out on one of these damn buses, that'd be it. It'd have to park. No windshield, no problem. No horn, oh no, got to pull over. But, hey, at least we got a breeze. Speeding? For what? To hurry up and wait. The driver pulls into a side street and motions us off the bus because we're going to eat lunch. I blow my top. No, I scream. You fucking assholes are taking us to the ferry and we're leaving now. The driver starts to laugh and that sends me into a frenzy. I start pulling seats up and throwing them around. When everyone gets off, he starts the bus up and off we go again. It turns out that he doesn't take us to the ferry. He takes us to the bus depot where we find Mr. Motorcycle holding court with all of his touts. I am furious. Mr. Motorcycle says he'll give me a refund for the air conditioning. I say I want a refund for the Mataram to Denpasar part of our ticket, plus the extra for the air conditioning, something like 19,000 rupees. I also tell him I don't want to ride on his stinking shit-ass buses anymore, and we will find our own way to Denpasar. He hesitates. I insist. Then he promises to get us on the 5 o'clock ferry to Bali. We're tired, confused, and hungry. We say okay, but we want the 10,000 rupee refund for the air conditioning right now. The plan is we have to wait around the bus station until 4 when the bus leaves to get the 5 o'clock ferry to Denpasar, which we should reach at about 9 p.m. That should put us 10 p.m. into Kuta Beach, and we should be able to meet Bill and Jen and AJ. So we sit at the bus depot, sucking carbon monoxide, returning the stares of the people. 4 o'clock rolls around and the bus comes. Amazingly, it is the same bus that dropped us off here, only it now has a windshield on it. Actually, the windshield is a two-piece and it hasn't quite been joined together yet. They pick us up and we drive back to the restaurant, where we pick up the people who had been dropped off there 2.5 hours earlier. Meanwhile, a crack team of highly skilled technicians swarm over the windshield, squirting black goop into the joints with the aid of masking tape. We begin to get antsy as this process seems to take forever, but finally we're off. Back to the bus station again. Why? I don't know. And then we're off, back to the restaurant. It's now 4:30, and after one more inscrutable trip to the bus station, we are barreling down the road to the ferry, horn blasting, swerving to avoid the horse carts, pedestrians, and other assorted traffic on the road. We make it in one piece, just as the ferry is pulling away from the dock. I can't believe it. I am done. We have waited 3 hours so that we could miss that ferry. It's too much for Greta. She loses it. She breaks down in tears as she realizes that we're not going to be in Bali tonight. We won't be able to meet our friends. Who knows how or if we'll find them now. The driver turns around and he finds her tears funny. That's when I lose it. Except the opposite way. I start abusing the driver, telling him to wipe that silly smile off his fucking face or I'll do it for him. I'm yelling, cursing, kicking, screaming, assholes, ignorance. I am pissed. Greta sniffling, me fuming. We demand to go back to the head office where we wait for 10 minutes until Motorcycle Man comes back. He's all smiles and apologies, but we're having none of it. He offers to pay for our losmen tonight. He promises that we're going to be on the 7 a.m. ferry tomorrow and in Denpasar by 11. I told him I'd rather die than spend another second on his company's bus. I demanded that he refund the entire price of the tickets from Bima, all of it, all 37,000 rupees, and we're going to be on our way. He hems and haws, but he finally gives in because the look on my face and my fist told him that I was ready to punch him in his damn face. We get our money in our bags and go out on the street to find a nice hotel and a BMO to take us there. That's when we started to splurge. We pick out a nice hotel, the Wisma Malati, and charter a personal BMO there for 1,000. Extravagance. We look at a couple of very nice rooms, finally settling for one for 38,000 rupees, about the same price as that entire hellish bus ride. What luxury. It was hot and cold, running water, shower, flush, toilet, the first Western-style bathroom in 3 weeks. There's even a TV. We have our own garden, and they bring us tea in the room. We strip off our slimy, dirty, sat in a stinking bus for 36 hours, clothes, and luxuriate in the first hot shower in a long time. We dress for dinner in front of the TV, and then we go to the hotel restaurant for a delicious meal, complete with several beers, karaoke on the tube. Karaoke, by the way, is music sing-along with scantily clad Asian women cavorting about on boats in exotic tropical locations with the words on the screen, and is available in your room for a mere 10,000 rupees per hour. After a nice relaxing meal, we bring a beer back to the room and watch TV. We plan to catch an early flight to Denpasar tomorrow. And the next day, we wake up feeling much refreshed. We have tea brought to the room and a good breakfast in the dining room. We check out flights at the Merpati Airlines office next door and find they go every hour until 12, then every 2 hours until 4. We pack and charter a BMO to the airport, which is the only place to buy tickets anyway. That's fine because that's where we got to go. We missed the 10 o'clock flight just barely, but our names are high on the list for the 11 o'clock flight, and we get on it for the 49,000 rupees, about $25. That was a lot of money for us and a 30-minute plane ride, but we felt like we deserved it. Before we know it, we're on the plane, hurtling down the runway on the way to Bali. It's a 25-minute flight. We don't even have time to level off. We go up, they give us some sweets and tea and water, and then we go down. We get off and collect our bags and go over to the international terminal to find out where Jen and Bill and AJ might be. It's now 11:45, and it looks like they might be on an Air New Zealand flight due in at 3:20. We settle in and wait and greet every incoming flight because we think they may have been routed through Sydney or someplace. We pay an exorbitant price for breakfast, and we wait and wait and wait. I mean, that's the other thing traveling is, waiting. He who waits the best wins. The Air New Zealand flight is delayed to 3:50, but we are rewarded when it comes in because, miracle of miracles, Jen and Bill are on it. It's good we're able to meet with these guys after all we've been through. They have been through something of a nightmare as well. They were packed onto a small, overloaded plane and were forced to make an unscheduled fuel stop in Brisbane, which caused their delay. We have no information on AJ's flight other than that it was from LA, and there's none coming in from LA that day. We had no way of knowing if he was coming through Hong Kong or someplace else. We got a taxi to Kuta Beach, which dumps us at BMO Corner. We don't have a clue where we're going to stay, but a tout approaches us and leads us to Benayasa Beach Inn, which is very nice, with a walled courtyard and gardens, private shower, flush toilets. 10,000 rupees doesn't seem bad for Kuta. This is the most touristy place we've been in for 3 weeks. We're too hot and bothered to look any further, so we stay. It's quiet and centrally located. We have a beer from the Losman and shower, and then go out to TJ's for some long-awaited but disappointingly mediocre Mexican food. It is really great to talk with old friends and eat and catch up with new gossip and rehash old gossip and compare travel experiences. We end the night at the minibar, which claims it is maxi-sized with beer, until Bill and Jan are literally falling asleep in their beers from a 13-hour odyssey. We call it a night. There is still no sign of AJ. As I read ahead in my journal, it was like 2 weeks before we hooked up with AJ in a miracle encounter in a post office parking lot. I remember at the time that he was really pissed, but I don't know what we might have done differently. Anyway, that's it for this one, episode 2. Thanks for listening, and we will see you down the road. check us out on Facebook for pictures. Thanks a lot. Bye.